New York. Now we want to welcome in via Skype from Holland, Michigan, the former chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Pete Hoekstra. Pete's now the Shillman Senior Fellow at the Investigative Project on Terrorism. He's also the author of the book Architects of Disaster, The Destruction of Libya. And we should point out, for purposes of this conversation, Pete has been a steadfast advocate for our old congressional colleague, John Kasich. John decided to get out of the campaign today. And Pete, I heard he was on a plane headed to Washington for an event, but turned around and went back. What did you hear about that decision, Pete?
Well, I was on a conference call with John at around 6 o'clock tonight. I think he was headed to the airport and decided not to get on the airplane because he recognized that this campaign was over. He really put in a good fight. Those of us that were with John, we were proud of the campaign that he ran, but he recognized on the way to the airport that Donald Trump was going to be the nominee and he was going to withdraw from the campaign. So I don't think he ever got on a plane today, JD.
All right, so it was just turning around the motorcade in Columbus, which is a little easier to do. Pete, Donald Trump was on MSNBC's Morning Joe this morning talking about the number 2 spot, saying he would go the political route. And then he specifically mentioned John Kasich later in the day on CNN. Listen.
I would be interested in vetting John. I like John. I've had a good relationship with John. I've gotten along with him well. But John, whether he's vice president or not, I think he'll be very, very helpful with Ohio.
So, Pete, John, born in McKees Rocks, Pennsylvania, and then governor of Ohio, 2 key states. Does that augur in favor? And would John even take the number 2 spot, Pete?
Well, I don't think John's ready to answer that question today. It's pretty emotional. You go through a campaign like this for 18 months and then you withdraw and you don't win the prize. It's pretty disappointing. John will work through it. Many of us that worked on this campaign, we know John Kasich. We know his capabilities. We know both his political capabilities and his legislative capabilities. I would be thrilled to see John Kasich as the number 2 guy to Donald Trump. I think he would bring the unity and a balance to that ticket. Whether he takes it or not, I just don't know.
Well, here's what we ask you to do, Pete. Take us up on our offer. Stay right there in front of the camera, and wherever you're watching, stay with us as well. Also, if you want to call us, you can do so at 1-877-Newsmax. That's 877-639-7629. More of your calls and more of Pete Hoekstra next.
And as I suspend my campaign today, I have renewed faith, deeper faith, that the Lord will show me the way forward and fulfill the purpose of my life. Thank you, and God bless.
Ohio Governor John Kasich making news today. A 5 o'clock East Coast time announcement that he was suspending his campaign. You heard him right there. With Miranda Kahn, J.D. Hayworth, with you on Newsmax Prime, inviting you to give us a call at 1-877-Newsmax, 1-877-639-7629. And we're rejoined by my old congressional colleague, Pete Hoekstra, the former chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. And he is offering some intelligence and also offering her point of view from Roy, Utah. We've got Sandra on the phone. Hiya, Sandra.
Hi, JD.
It's good to have you.
You too. Thank you so much for your service.
It was a great honor.
I want to say that I've said from the beginning of this campaign that I think that Ted Cruz better serve our country by replacing Scalia on the Supreme Court than he would as president.
Miranda, that's what our good friend Phyllis Schlafly was saying. When she endorsed Donald Trump, she said Trump for president, Ted Cruz for the Supreme Court. Let's get Pete Hoekstra in on this because he spent a lot of time in Washington. What do you think about that idea, Pete?
I think it would be great to have a president that would consider someone like Ted Cruz as a potential justice on the Supreme Court. Let's take this one step at a time. We need to elect a president in November and swear in a new president on January 20.
Well, and speaking of presidents, in a new CNN ORC telephone poll, Hillary Clinton leads the billionaire businessman by double digits nationally. Everyone's been talking about this. Mrs. Clinton received 54%, while Donald Trump came in at 41%. 4% of those polled want neither candidate. A whole 1% would prefer a different candidate. Yeah, the poll of 89 registered voters was conducted April 28th through May 1st and has a margin of error of plus or minus 3.5%. That's what we've been hearing this all along in the general election, that Hillary is going to crush Trump. But, you know, everyone's been wrong about Trump from the beginning. So who's to say they're not wrong now, right, Pete?
What about the poll, Pete?
I think that's exactly right. The one thing we'll be able to say about the election of 2016 is that throughout this process, everybody has been wrong. All the pundits have been wrong. The pollsters have been wrong, and those types of things. I'm fairly optimistic. I think that this is a repudiation of Washington, but it's also a repudiation of conservatives. You know, the conservatives haven't governed. The conservative public, they are frustrated with the lack of action in Washington. We got 240 some Republicans in the House. They can't even pass a budget. We can't do anything on it.
And there's problems at the White House, too. Listen, we only got about a minute and a half left. Before we go, we got a guy who can talk for us quick. From Brooklyn, we've got Santos. Hi, Santos.
I'm very happy that Donald Trump, Indiana, won yesterday. And I hope that Bernie Sanders stays in the race. This way, Hillary cannot get elected, lose votes, and Donald Trump to continue the Republican Party. I was a former Democratic. Now I am a Republican.
All right, Santos, we appreciate your evaluation. And to Santos' point, Pete, the notion that the longer the Democrats have to take and fight this out on through June in California, that will redound to Mr. Trump's benefit, will it not? About 30 seconds, Pete.
Hey, both parties have a lot of rebuilding to do to bring the unity in. I think the biggest problem the Democrats have is worrying about Donald Trump. The conservative Democrats, the Macomb County Democrats in Michigan, they're going to be with Donald Trump. They're never going back to Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders.
Goes back to what Miranda Kahn was telling us at the outset of the program, realignment in the air. Those Reagan Democrats, soon to be Donald Democrats, and of course Bernie and the young kids giving Hillary fits over on the left. Hey, Pete, we really appreciate the time. Thanks so much. Coming back with more of your calls, and also Michael Patrick Flanagan, and we'll see you a bit later too. That's all ahead here on Newsmax Prime, so stay with us.